My name is Michael Scarpello. I'm the Dallas County Elections Administrator. And I know I've met many of you, but not all of you. And we have not only the people here, but we have a lot of folks online. So I guess while if I have a microphone, I'm going to ask whether or not our people online can hear me okay. If someone can acknowledge. Okay, so I'll try to.
On mute.
Okay. So
I think it would help if we could mute each other.
So we'll go ahead and get started. So, our agenda for tonight is we're going to do introductions and review our membership. We're a member of the VCAC. We're going to give a little background on vote centers. We're going to do analysis of, very briefly, do some brief analysis of the Dallas County Vote Center plan. And then we're going to discuss, in general terms, the future of vote centers in Dallas County. And then we're going to discuss future. So I want to start with introductions. And first, I want to start with my staff, the Dallas County election staff. That just start inside, and I'm going to let them stand up and introduce themselves. Okay. Hi, my name is Kyle Rush.
Hi, I'm Beth O'Leary. Hi, Ryan.
We're going to have a talk. That
works a lot better.
Great. So as far as the membership, we're not going to go through a roll call. Like I said before, I think when you all came here today, you all signed in electronically, and all those at home have signed in electronically. I think we also have a paper copy of a list. I don't have a copy, but I can get one. And you can see who your fellow members are.
I don't think we have.
Pass out that copy. So she's going to go ahead and pass that out, but I can tell you that in 2019, there were 49 persons, which is a very large group. And the appointment process was not an official. It was one where the election administration made those appointments, invited people to attend, and they either attended or not. And it wasn't an official gavel-down group, similar to the Citizen Election Advisory Committee, with this formalized group with bylaws that had attendance policies. This group is not that informal group that we looked at, that we wanted to get back together. We wanted to look and see whether or not the many people could participate and potentially expand. So we talked to the Commissioner's Court, we got some of their advice about who should or should not be on the committee, and we expanded. So the group is up to now 68 members, I believe, but even larger. The way we look at it is we'd rather be too inclusive than trying to exclude. So I think there are still a few people that have not committed, or we haven't been able to get a hold of, that sort of thing. So So we're continuing to work on finalizing this list. And when we do get to a point where we're ready to take a vote on something, we won't be tonight. We will have an electronic roll call, electronic voting. Okay? Any questions?
Court made recommendation.
The Commissioner's Court did make recommendations to expand the expert groups that he added this year. So, background on vote centers. So, Texas Election 307 allows counties to eliminate precinct polling places and to adopt county-wide polling places, otherwise known as vote centers. And so, and you can have vote centers for various elections, for general elections, for each election on uniform election dates, like upcoming May election, and then the resulting runoffs. Elections on proposed constitutional amendments, primary elections, and when political subdivisions join in a general election. And the whole advantage of vote centers is that voters can vote at any vote center located in the county. They don't have to go to their particular location. And I have a kind of a long history with vote centers. Vote centers started in Colorado in about 2004, and it's kind of expanded in Colorado. In fact, I got my second job because of vote centers and because of a failure of vote centers in 2006 in Denver. And as a result, they kind of fired everybody after they had a disastrous election. And then they hired me. We tried to fix it. And so, vote centers, I believe, in Texas started to catch on too. I think the first pilots were like 2005. But then by 2019,
Can you turn up your volume? They're saying they can't hear you. There's not a way to turn the volume up.
there is not.
Online can't hear anything. You just need to touch your lips. If you're still, then they can.
Yeah. How about now?
Yes. I'm sorry. Put it in your mouth.
I get started and we put this conversation with the vendors.
Did you video it, please? I just think just start on YouTube that you're.
And you can't believe the price we paid. Anyway, so next slide. So the history of vote centers in Texas, of what the law requires. Commissioner's Court must initially hold a public hearing. Secretary of State shall select participants that meet the requirements. So it's not, if it's a shall, if you meet the requirements, they shall allow it. Up to around 90 counties of our 254 counties now participate. My understanding. County must adopt a methodology for determining where each polling place will be located. And the number may not be less than 50% of the precinct polling places that would otherwise be in the county. In the first year of adopting it, which we're well past, would be 65% of the original. County must provide notice to voters of any changes. County must solicit input from organizations that represent minority communities, thus Vote Center Advisory Committee. County may continue the program at Commissioner's Court and the Secretary of State approve. Each commissioner's precinct must contain at least one vote center and shall not contain more than twice the number of vote centers in another commissioner's precinct. So, the history in Dallas, just to refresh your memories. So in March of 2019, this office filed a notice of intent to participate in the program. And in April 2019, formed the Vote Center Advisory Committee. The committee met April 11th, May 9th, May 30th, and June 20th. During those times, those meetings, they developed a methodology for determining where vote centers would be located, recommended the number of locations to be used as vote centers to the Commissioner's Court. They assisted in establishing a communications plan, and they established criteria to select election day judges. In July, the Commissioners Court approved the application to participate. And in September, the Secretary of State approves the application to conduct the November election as a vote center election. In November 2019, that election was conducted using vote centers for the first time. And then afterwards, I believe in the end of November, the VCAC, this group, reviewed the success of the program. And then an application was sent requesting the establishment of permanent election day vote centers in Dallas County. Then in December 2019, the Secretary of State certified that Dallas County conducted a successful election and authorized the county to continue to conduct elections under the program. So in 2019, we went to the Vote Center Advisory Committee. It looked at the criteria for selecting vote centers. And some of the criteria was, that a location should have a large room of equipment, should have internet capabilities and good reception. It should be ADA accessible. It should have good large parking lots. It should be on city transportation bus routes. Not sure what this next one means. So I'm good. If anyone is helping out, I'm not sure what that consolidation review means. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A review of consolidating polling places, if they should, collapse two into one, that sort of thing. And then allow political science and electioneering, and there would hopefully not be any security concerns with that location. So the final recommendation was to, I think that there was a lot of discussion, and some of you were there and I wasn't, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the discussion ended up being not consolidated, but to actually use all of the existing precinct polling places and convert them to vote centers. So not to reduce anything. If location A was a precinct polling place, it then became a vote center. And then to do so for two election cycles, meaning starting with November 2021 through November 2020. Starting through November 19 through November 2021. And then after two election cycles, compare election data, turnout, staffing, and other factors to determine how best to consolidate the existing number of polling locations. So that was stated back in 2019. So since 2019, in August 2021, I went to the Commissioners Court and proposed reconvening the VCAC to review the program, because we were getting close to being through two election cycles. But based on legal advice, Commissioners Court postponed reconvening until after the county redistricting. Then in December 2021, we considered reconvening again, but the 2022 election cycle was kind of starting and decided to postpone once again. In April 2022, after the March primary election, we had a lot of problems with getting poll workers. So we pulled the VCAC together and we asked for a recommendation to reduce the number of polling places for two May elections, knowing that we would go back to full strength for the November election. And then, of course, that brings us to today. And so we did that, and that brings us home. So back in April, then a recommendation was made, and I think we reduced this group, approved the reducing by, I think, around 40. Then that brings us to today to reconvene and to start to take a look at the use of vote centers over the last couple of years. I'm going to pause right there. Any questions so far on kind of the history, questions, corrections, thoughts? Anyone online?
For clarity, for people who said the current list is the original list that we were working on. No reductions. In 2019.
Yes. So in 2019, I think there was 469 locations approved.
Right.
And we've been using that as our base number since then.
Okay.
So having said that, every election, isn't the same. So if you look at the history of elections, so in May 2019, the May election, the joint election, there was 324, not vote centers, but precinct polling places, 324. But then, 2019, after we adopted vote centers, the target was always 469. And so the first election, it was 466. And then for the presidential general was 466 also. And then May 1st, 2021, it was 432. So we jumped from a May of 324 up to 432. Shanae knows that we had lots of discussions about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but how that increased the cost to cities. So then the constitutional election last year was 443. Then for the primary, it was 429. For the May 7th election, it was going to be 406. It ended up being 399. And then for the May 24th election, it was 401. Then back to November, it was 462. So the reason that fluctuates, that you should know, is that even though there's a vote center, that's been designated by commissioners or recommended by this group, they don't want us there. Sometimes they say we do a reconstruction, or we got something going on that day. So we don't always get those locations. And so depending on the expected turnout, if it's like the November election, this past November, if someone drops out, we work really hard to aggressively find a replacement. But if we know that the turnout is going to be somewhat low, we consult with the commissioner in that precinct, at that location, and we say, we really want to replace this one, and sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. So that's why the number kind of fluctuates up and down. So, advantages of the existing vote center model. So, from what we can tell, voters have accepted the vote center model, and we have virtually no complaints about that. I mean, we get complaints, but no one says, why are we using vote center? For the most part, it's been kind of accepted in our county. I mean, as you can see, we've had multiple elections doing it. Of course, there's more options for and low travel time for voters. I mean, in the perfect world, we have 1,000 polling places, and and people can just walk across the street and go to their polling place. In the perfect world, if there was no constraints. And so with the 469, a high number, it's more convenient for voters. And so, in addition, with these high numbers, we've kind of developed a reliable methodology for efficiently allocating our personnel and equipment. We spent a lot of time, and the party people we spent time with them, where we work through these numbers. We have our elections analysts and Melissa and myself, and we have lots and lots of spreadsheets where we really, really crunch the numbers and project not only overall turnout for the county, but vote center by vote center. And we're getting pretty good at it. And so when we do that, we can, allocate less equipment in these locations. So we've done what we can to reduce the cost without affecting the voters. So concerns. There are a lot of people have concerns about the existing vote center model. What we know is that some voters still don't understand that they can vote anywhere. Some voters still think, I've got to go to my precinct polling place. We're going to talk about what we've done in the following slides. There's difficulty in staffing a one-size-fits-all elections. When you say, I've got a very large presidential election and I've got a very low turnout May election, for instance, sometimes it's proven to be very difficult to staff those elections, because what you'll find is that there's the same interest there is in voting is the same interest there is in work. So they kind of mirror each other. Yes.
Can you tell me where did you get the data that indicates that voters still don't understand their ability to vote anywhere? Where is that?
It's mostly anecdotal.
Anecdotal. Okay.
Yeah, people call comments that we get, the meetings that we have with the parties and various people where we still hear that. Another concern is the cost of conducting a one-size-fits-all election. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then with the existing model where we've gambled down 469, some vote centers are permanently not available. They've told us, I know we're on your list, but we don't want to be a vote center anymore. So it's time for us to look at them that are no longer available. And then some of them are permanently not available, and some of them are available sometimes, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. So depending on a whim, sometimes it's.
Have we effectively eliminated fire stations as being not mission compatible, or?
We have not. As part of this group is to look at things like that. Look at those locations where they say, we don't want to be a vote center anymore. To look at those locations that are kind of wishy-washy, where they want to be a vote center and then they don't, and they do and they don't. Because that's difficult for voters, right? On. Then some of them are not suitable. They just have bad parking, or they have bad electricity, they have bad lighting, or whatever the reason it may be. We've never really taken a look at that, because remember, in 2019, we just went from existing polling places to vote centers without doing a good analysis. And then some of them are not ADA compliant. And so I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about all these. So concern number one, some voters still don't understand that they have the ability to vote anywhere. So in 2019, I don't believe there was a lot of money allocated or spent to educate voters. I think there was a lot of free publicity. I think the media and everyone else did a really good job of saying, hey, we're switching models. But what we recognized this last year is that we needed to spend more. So Commissioner's Court, going into the May elections, allocated $181,000 in April, and then $605,000 in October. And this is Anywhere awareness campaign. We did outreach that included TV, radio, direct mail, billboards, digital ads, etc. And so I'm going to use this to give myself a little brief. For those who haven't seen it, I'm going to play our commercial that we ran. How many? Well, all right. So this is the commercial we worked with our vendors to.
Gonna be jumpy just because it's on Zoom. Michael, I think you could stamp it on somebody's forehead that vote centers are here and people still live in this one. It's just just don't pay attention.
I'm going to defend Chance. Right before this meeting, this was playing, so I don't know why it's not working now.
Now you're going to develop another one for May, or are you going to just have this online?
Probably not. I don't know. We've got to have that discussion with our cities. Because keep in mind that for the May election, the cities are paying the bill. We're going to talk about that a little bit. So that's really going to be a decision that's up to them. For the November election, the county was paying the bill. And so
For the video, for this video?
For the video and the cost to air it.
Is Dallas County having their mayoral elections, or the city of Dallas having their mayoral elections in May or November? May.
So
This is Billy, City Secretary, City of Dallas. It's in May.
I'm gonna reshare my screen. Kaz is gonna try to get that commercial plan. She's gonna get that figured out. How many people have seen the commercial? Also, there's a lot that haven't. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't notice that y'all had one up there, so I think that's where I missed out.
So I'm gonna sneak in here. So Nick, why don't you get up and just kind of talk a little bit about the awareness campaign, who we work with, how that all went, and what it included.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick. Can y'all hear me? Am I loud enough? Yeah. All right. So we worked with AB on a few things in February. We worked on them with outreach on mail ballots because SB1. So they produced some stuff, some mailers, phone calls, stuff like that. And Output Business Images is a local Dallas firm. The county uses, I think, for Health and Human Services stuff. And then we started working with them for voter outreach stuff. And then as we got to the November election, we just wanted to make sure everyone was not just aware of the November election, because I think the campaign did a really good job of getting that word out, but that you can vote anywhere, how you can vote. So this wasn't just vote anywhere, it was vote anywhere, but also part of it was this is where you need to go to vote by mail. These are the resources we have. It was in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, so we produced these things across all three languages. We're talking digital ads, whether it's Facebook and Instagram, YouTube ads, TV, of course, radio on several language, different stations, billboards if you get it. I want to see at least one billboard in each commissioner district at high intersections, at high traffic intersections. And so it really ran from everything from this is the last day to register to vote, this is how you do vote by mail, to these commercials, which, aired, I think, 2 days before early voting started, like these commercials, to tell you that you can vote anywhere. So it was a pretty...
So they ran for like two weeks.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty thorough, what do they call it?
We got a lot of reach. The TV stations are obviously local television. And then we're able to do a lot of really cool targeting for digital ads. So if you stream, we know where zip code you're in. We know a bunch of stuff about you, or the firm does. So we're able to pretty pinpoint who we wanted to pinpoint. It was a really good use of our resources and money. And then we got a lot of really good feedback from it too. So yeah, I don't even remember how many. It was hundreds of thousands of views just on the YouTube link alone. So it was really good.
All right, thanks. While I go back to sharing the presentation. And so part of it, we went sit.
Do any of the stations give us some free time on these as a public service announcement, or we have to buy all of it?
We had to buy all of our media. Public service announcements during election time are really good because everyone's buying to get that airtime, right? Yeah. And so the proof is, Nick mentioned that they were pretty effective, and one of the ways we knew that they were effective, well, we had ABI also did some measurement, but their opinion said it was pretty effective. But one of the things that we really said in those commercials was to use our online lookup tool. Because if the commercial played, then it would say, use our online lookup tool and look for wait times. And what we found is during the early voting period that about 1 in every 2 voters used that wait time tool. They measured the clicks. And so that's a high percentage. And so instead of people going to the same location and having to wait, They were using that tool, and the wait time for early voting was only 1.2 minutes.
How many judges did you get?
For early voting, it was 100%. For election day, when she mentions judges, the judges have to do something to get the wait time tools to work. And so some of the judges on election day don't do that, so we didn't have 100% compliance. But of those that did, our wait time was 3.7 minutes on election day, so that's pretty good. So we're going to work on those judges so we know which ones did good.
Did you say 100% of the voters
Yeah, because keep in mind that early voting lasts over 2 weeks, and so we're harassing everybody on, hey, you haven't put it away, and 3 hours. So we did that on election day too. So bottom line is the ability to understand that people can vote anywhere is getting better. And so I think that awareness is just going to continue to increase. I don't think it's going to be a problem for votes. I think people are going to word of mouth, as much as we can do with media and everything else. So I think that's going to continue to grow. So, concern number 2, difficulty in staffing one-size-fits-all elections. So I want to give you some sense of how different elections are different sizes. So if you look at this, you look at the turnout for the May 2019 May election, the 2020 general, 2021 May, and the 2022 general. You see that overall, it's broken down by mail, by early voting, by election day, then the overall turnout. So 2019 May election, 9.88%. The 2020 general, 66.15%. The 2021 May election, 9.63%. And the 2022 general that we just finished, 44.23%. What's interesting about that also is if you look at the election day versus the early voting, that varies a lot, I think, depending on circumstances. So the 2020 election, a lot of people voted early. There was that extra 1 week of early voting, which helped. So 78% voted early, 12% voted on election day. So the election day numbers were down to 20, but then let me finish this slide and then we'll go back to the So
I'm singing all of them.
So the turnout in 2022 election day was back up to that 49%, which is around, near where it always is. And so if you look at just the raw numbers, 213,000 voters versus 57,000 or 54,000 in the May election. So that's kind of the norm. So having said that, I'm going to pause. I'm going to let's go ahead and play that version. We do I need to stop sharing? You need to share.
It should be easy. And in Dallas County, this is how we do it. We've got over 45 vote centers open during the early voting period and over 400 on election day. You can vote at any location in the county. Find a convenient vote center near you and check on wait times with our online tool. This is how we do it. Now, let's see how you do it.
Yeah, pretty positive response on that. They did a nice job. So, go back to sharing again.
Michael, could you comment as to whether that's available in Spanish or other languages?
Yeah, it was. If you go on our YouTube, I think they have it listed on our YouTube channel in the alternate languages. Yeah. Yes, sir.
all of our materials are not only Spanish, but Vietnamese also. That's a third requirement. So I showed turnout, and you can see huge discrepancy between May general and general elections. Now, what's kind of the in-betweener, the tweener, is primary elections. March primary elections. I think, you looked that number up, I can't remember. I think it's, let us know what that number was. Primary election turnout. We didn't include that because we're trying to contrast May to November here, but there are some elections that kind of fall between.
That was a mustache.
There's no way that I can blow it up now. Okay, so the difficulty is, so there's different size elections, right? So that we,
I'm looking at it.
So we have difficulty in staffing those elections. So recruitment of a poll worker in a low turnout election is difficult. It's just like what I just said earlier. The same interest there is in working at presidential. Everyone's excited. They want to work. They want to vote. May election, Saturday. A lot of people want to go to graduation. They want to go to park. They want to go to vacation. It's very difficult to get people to work. So for the May 7th, to give an example of that, before I talk about May 7th, I would say that this year was even more difficult because the passage of SB 1, new law that kind of empowered poll workers, poll watchers, and that new law kind of scared some of our poll workers. You know, for that first election, they were like, I don't know if I want to work because the law, it was written in such a way where it says that you can be cited for a misdemeanor if you interfere with a watcher. So I think for that first election or two, that kind of scared people. I think we've kind of gotten over that, where people realize that the poll watchers are not necessarily an enemy, that they're just there to do their jobs. So I think we're getting over that.
Just a question, because I'm new to the experience. That May 7th date, or that date there, is determined by the state legislature?
Yes, it's called a uniform election date. And so they say that the first week and the first Saturday in May is an election date where if people want to have a joint election, they join together, they contract with us, and we run the election for them.
One of the challenges I've always concerned in doing voter registration, well, not registration, but getting people to vote on campaigns, is that May 7th coincides with Cinco de Mayo, which is a big celebration, not only in the Latino community, but everywhere else, because they want to get drunk. But it's just, so I always had the challenge where I talk to people to try to get early vote, and they didn't. And I go back and get the numbers list. Hey, I'm gonna go vote on my job. So you can't do that this time. And this is a few years back. You got to go to this place. But it was just hard because I'm gonna be at Joe Pool Lake. I'm gonna be somewhere else. I'm at my favorite restaurant and fit in. So it's always been a challenge. And I've asked that before. I wanted to verify by someone that would know that it's the state legislature that controls that. But it's if we continue to have that date, we'll always have not only the challenge that you talk about there, but that I'd rather go have a party, like you said, or
it's just one every 6 or 7 years. I mean, it changes based on first Saturday. May 6th this year.
And so May 5th may be on a Tuesday, but your function is going to be that weekend. So also,
I hope that doing early voting, voters can vote anywhere in the county.
Yeah, and you can vote early.
It's just that that weekend, it always coincides, at least in my history.
You can't help it.
I know, but it's just something to know that as I talk to someone in the state legislature, if you're really trying to increase minority voters, then don't do it during a holiday. Don't do it during a holiday that's not an official holiday. I'm interested.
If we could, we all raise our hands and we all wanted to talk. It was anecdotal evidence. We had a lot of those poll workers tell us that. Now, I think we're getting over that because I don't think we had that problem in November. Because I think people realize that they're, like I said, they're not a problem, and so it was definitely getting better. So the March election was the first one. Then we had 2 Mays, and then we had a June, and then the November. So I think we're kind of over that hump. I think initially it was a problem. So yeah, and like I said, I think that people now realize they're just there to do their job. It has not been problematic.
I say party here, I didn't hear it. My part felt great.
I think we heard from some folks. Yeah. But like I said, I think the good news is that I think we're over that hump. I think that, I don't believe that's going to be an issue in the future. So to give an example of some of the difficulties, so the May 7th, 2022 election, we had met with this group, right, and we reduced the number of polling places. So we went from 469 down to, I think it's 405, 406. So we reduced the number by 63.
Yeah.
2020, April 2022, we did.
April 2020. I don't remember.
As city secretary,
I did not. I was so surprised. That's not neither here nor there, but I'm saying I didn't know. General people elected to the general election of the municipality.
If they were originally on the VCAC as opposed to the expanded.
No, we won. No, we did not. Those sectors calling each other about this. No, we were not on the list. I was on the committee from the very beginning. So we should.
Well, we'll have Nick's group.
It's okay. I'll haunt you. Have it.
You should.
Thanks, you will.
So, so we shut down 63 prior to. Even then, the party worked their tails off to recruit people to get them to work, but we still had such a lack of poll workers that we had to close 7 more on election day because of no shows of judges and of workers. And so, in addition to that, election judges who have to pick up their equipment the Sunday before the Thursday before the Saturday election. We had 81 no-shows. People that week said, I will be there to run my polling place, then didn't show up. 81. So then we're scrambling last minute, calling people, you be a judge. And we got all those 81 filled except for 7. So once again, it's a mail act. It's very difficult. Overall, let me just say this last one. Overall, poll worker shortages, we were short 320 workers for that day.
I think I haven't had, but I think when you end up getting to the end of your presentation, you're going to find that the secretaries are fine with consolidating polling presentation. It's going to be your November people that may not be fine with it. There's too many polling locations for the general election. But there's not, and I don't know about November elections because I don't see that. And if it tag on to the November election, y'all's election anyway. So we're happy to let those on it. So I just think there's a segregation of 2 groups. But I just wanted to put that out there. I think you're going to find us being amicable and amiable to the deletion of poll centers that affect November election.
And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
That's what this group's going to be talking about.
Yeah.
Set the framework up for that discussion. Okay. Sure.
My city, I've done a survey where
This is Debbie, and I could not hear that. 324 short, and then it kind of cut out. What was it?
324 workers short on that day. 81
short what?
81 judges who didn't show up to pick up their supplies 2 days prior to
don't know if you can see the screen. But I'm saying that most of the
Yeah, I heard the 324 short, but I couldn't hear what we were short of.
Workers.
have surveyed our cities and know what locations could possibly be shut down, which ones they're not getting voters. So I've done my survey, and I think all of us have, so we can recommend that information to you, sending at this time to our council members, so we can help them with that. That's it.
So concern number 3 is cost of executive control. For the city secretaries are really concerned, right? So here's something to keep in mind. May election, joint election, are completely trying to participate in jurisdiction. Doesn't mean, except last May, there was a constitutional amendment on that May joint election, so the county paid a significant part.
Can't hear you at all, Michael.
Can't hear me at all?
You talk closer to the mic, please. or adjust it. Just can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Well, I think we have hiccups on it, so I'm trying to talk out those a little bit better. It's more than just the mic. There's microphones in the seat. So for a May election, those costs are paid completely by participating jurisdictions. So coming election, you will be paying the entire cost. And so those costs, like everything else we see in life, those costs are going up. So in the 2021 election, from 19 to 2021, those costs went up significantly. Reason for that was that we had new election equipment in 2019, 2020, and we never charged for that in 2021. Was not charged to the jurisdiction. The county ate those costs in 2019. But beginning in 2021, when I came here, I have this responsibility to charge for those. So we started to charge for the new election. Basically, you can charge for every piece of equipment. You charge 10% of the cost. It's kind of amortized over. There was a pay increase for poll workers. Poll workers had been making $20. So that increased to $16 an hour for clerks and $18 an hour for judges. In addition, in 2021, there was 432 vote centers, as we talked about earlier, but there was only 300, it's either 348 or 324 polling places in 2019. So in previous elections, when we were in precinct elections, we had more consolidation. But because of the way the vote center law is written, that when we went to vote centers, the interpretation was you couldn't reduce that number. Since then, we've kind of reinterpreted it and looked at it a little bit closer, talked to the Secretary of State, and determined that we can reduce. But back then, that was the case. In addition to all that, there was a new vote center formula. The way you distribute the cost to the participating jurisdictions was done by how many polling places are in my jurisdiction, as opposed to now everybody share the cost of all the vote centers because everybody can vote everywhere. Probably better. So I'll just talk about changes every place. So this vote center formula just redistributed. There was for the cities, there was winners and losers. Some cities less percentage and some paid a little bit more. But nonetheless, it was a change and one that we couldn't help. We adopted the same vote center formula that was adopted by all the counties that are going to vote center. So we mitigated our costs in 2021. We said, this is going to hurt. What can we do to reduce these costs? So when we went into that election, we projected using our old ways of doing business, we projected the cost was going to be $4.6 million. And so what we did is we tightened our belts. We tightened our belts significantly. We changed a lot of our processes. We tried to just not hire so many temp workers. We just were as efficient as we could be, and we ended up conducting that election for $2.9 million rather than 4.6. We took some of the people, but it was still painful because their costs still went up. And the way we did that, we use a lot of analytics that I mentioned before, where we're not just passing out the same number of equipment to a polling place that we know there's not going to be one. So we use those analytics to efficiently distribute people and equipment. We reduced our reliance on vendors. So those vendors are very expensive to the tune of about $1,800 a day, ESNFs, when they're in here running the elections for us. So what we've been doing is we're taking over those responsibilities and we're doing those ourselves. By our full-time staff rather than paying vendors to do our work. And we reduced the number of temporary workers. We did what we could to create this cost. So the reason I'm telling you this is that someone might say, why are you cutting poll workers? Why are you suggesting cutting polling places? Why don't you just be more efficient? Well, we've already done that. We've already tightened our belts as much as we can. So now we're reaching the point here in the next slide on 2023. So the joint election costs for the 2023 election are going to continue to rise. There's been a pay increase for election judges from $15 to now $20 an hour. Pay for poll worker training, we now pay for poll worker training, which we never did before, and we now pay for poll worker setup the night before the elections. And that's all because we're trying to run better elections. Make sure our people are trained properly. Because the better people are trained, they're set up, etc. That means then that we can run those polling places more efficiently, have less personnel. So it's kind of an investment, if you will, in that training. Our county, my salary and all my staff salary, we've got raises. We're getting raises, and so our costs are going up. The polling place location prices have gone up significantly. What those locations charge us to use their location. And so what the bottom line is the prices have gone up. So here's an example. City of Richardson, 2019, their election day costs only, not early voting. Election day cost was $40,000. 2021, despite the fact that we were trying to be as efficient as possible, went up to $62,000. This year, using the current vote center model, their cost was $97,000. So for especially small jurisdictions, those costs can be quite burdensome.
And a maximum for how much you charge?
That's one of the things we're going to consider. We're going to look at what some of these locations are charged and see whether or not we want to make that one of the criteria for picking a location.
Can you, this is Molly from Disability Rights Texas. Could you, I need help, I need to understand why some locations charge you. I see the cost comparison explanation, but is it every location that charges you or just some of these businesses and city government offices?
Mostly businesses and churches. But the city
government offices are not allowed to charge.
That's correct. The schools, city, government offices do not charge us. It's the private sector, churches, etc.
Okay. How many nonprofits do y'all approach for this? Because our office from Travis County serves as a polling site and we don't charge.
Well, that's one of the reasons we're here. Yeah. Is because what we've done in the past is we just adopted, if it was a polling place, the last 20 years, it's still a polling place. So now we're trying to take a look at that and say, is that the best method, or should we modify our approach and take into consideration all these other factors, which we'll be talking about those other factors.
Did you say churches charge?
Absolutely.
Yes. So, like, what would what raised the cost? I mean, what would be? Is it like electricity? I mean, what were the reasons?
I've been to the grocery store lately. Everything's going up, right? And so their costs go up, so they charge us more.
So you're talking about like they are charging y'all to reimburse their costs for electricity and water and some of these other utilities.
I believe so. I mean, they don't.
Not grocery store costs.
We just get the bill. We don't. It's really not part of our negotiations now because they know that they're a designated location and it's not a factor that we consider. It's just their location. We go to them. They send us.
And it could be insurance costs and risks such as that, and parking and those type of things.
So I know where I go, they have to hire somebody to help them. It's not
I'm sure there's a whole lot of reasons that the prices are going up. Question.
Besides the minimum and maximum, is there even guidelines for like a new location? In my experience, we had our center as the first time polling location, and we didn't even know that we could get paid. And when we were told that, we didn't even know what to charge the county for. So we just charged for renting the space and security that we hired for that day. But is there even a guideline on what should be the charge?
There are no current guidelines right now. So that's one of the things that we want to consider, whether or not we want to put some guidelines.
Michael, technically, government offices and school districts should not be charging you, with the exception of if they have to have a sheriff's deputy there or a police officer. We have numerous polling locations on early voting and election day, both school districts and city facilities, and we make them flex their work and their time. So we try to not even go there, or we have exempt workers come in and open the building. Why? Because that's where they're exempt. They work extra hours and they can leave early or stay late or leave early the next week. I mean, you got to work with your people.
Those are some great best practices that hopefully, some of the other cities can do too. Any other questions?
Have you ever tried to reach out with the different communities and have the centers? For example, we have our center at Garland, and last year was the first time we got to be elected to be the location place, and we didn't charge you anything. So, but we couldn't get into the location until recently. So I didn't know why you didn't know about us, and we tried to contact, but we didn't have a contact until recently, and we have someone around here to reach out to us. So have you considered to find some more location like us so you can save the cost?
Well, keep in mind that we would love to do that, but our hands are tied because the Commissioners Court in 2019 said these are the polling places you shall use. And so that's why we're here now to consider whether or not that same list is the list that we should continue to use. And so if we open up our minds and we start recruiting other locations, thinking outside the box, trying to find new locations, then this group will make a recommendation to the Commissioners Court. We'll talk about this later, but it's basically, should we stay the same? Should we modify? Should we reduce? Should we increase? Should we also?
Could we possibly come up with a schedule so that if there are communities that can only be reached or served by this one place that does charge, then that maybe could be put on a priority to have to meet that cost, and then schedule down, like, if you have others that cost that much, we can look for and find something that's going to either be free or low cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. Beggars can't be choosers. And if you got a certain location or certain area, then you got to have coverage, and it's the only game in town. Sometimes you might have to pay the price, right? And so those are a lot of factors involved.
This is Molly again. I would suggest doing outreach within the county to various groups and communities of people, because a lot of people in the community, a lot of businesses and nonprofits and other entities are not aware that they can even volunteer their site as a polling location.
I agree.
So technically, you can have a huge list of possibilities that is approved by the commissioner's court, and then you can pick from that broad list of it. To her point, right? Like they gave you the approved list. If your approved list was massive, then you can pick. Would that be an answer?
Well, keep in mind that there are certain legal constraints, and we're going to consider what those constraints are in the following weeks to see what our options are. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if that is an option where we can name, here's 500 locations, we're going to use 400, that sort of thing. So I don't know that answer, but see James back there writing down that question. So I'm sure he's going to be researching that for us.
Since many of the school districts in our community have elected to have a holiday for their students on that day, could we scrub the list and make sure that there are campuses maybe that are not being utilized for various reasons that we could now use because they're not being used for students?
I think everything's on the table. Here's one thing I want you to keep in mind, though. As we speak down in Austin, they're speaking. And so one of the things that they're contemplating is the possibility of not using schools. There's a bill that says you shall not use schools. I mean, that would kill us. So, that's something we got to keep in mind that could happen.
Since that came up, I want to be a very advocate of not using schools. I can name you 1,000 reasons not to, but especially during the time period when you have all this early voting, you got 12 days. Anybody can walk on this campus of that school saying, I'm here to vote. And they could be there for other purposes. And we've known about all these sexual perverts and child molesters and things like that. No school or no child care facility, even a church with a child care facility, should be used at all. Now, I agree with trying to find facilities that people will donate to us, like a business or a nonprofit organization, something like that has a facility. But if it's also used as a school or as a child care facility, it should be off limits. I know I'm needed to go to the state legislature on this because they passed a law saying that every school district has to allow their buildings to be used by the county election department. But they should reverse that and say, no, they can. They should prohibit them from doing it because of what happened. Just takes one weirdo to come in there and shoot up 50 students, and we wish we'd gone the other way with that.
Right, and so the conversations along child safety or student safety has been kind of twofold. Some people say, let's don't use polling schools and polling places. And then others say, let's close the school in service day.
Well, if it's closed for the day or if it's summer vacation or something like that, or if it's on Saturday voting, that's not a problem. But if it's during the day when children are there, that's why I know in Garland, where I live, our Garland ISD puts a marshal out there at each one of the locations, but that's cost of the school district.
So lots of things to consider, though, right?
But normally at schools, the locations are at gym. So it's pretty much like separated from school. So, I mean, you really...
schools.
Yeah.
You know what, right through the school, you get a lot.
Just to clarify, so the commission is going to approve the list of locations to be considered. Those are locations that are being used now. Now, is this the point to present to the commissioner's court why we need to look at other additional locations? Is that going to be presented to them?
So the way the system works is when you go to the vote center model, you're supposed to have input from the community on changing that model, and if you want to change that model. So in 2019, this group made a recommendation. Commissioner's court adopted it. So now this group is together again to make another recommendation. Then Commissioner's Court will adopt it or amend it or reject it.
So this is where we could mention guidelines for locations, costs, and things of that nature.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're developing as a guideline. So if a facility is not good, are y'all going to be setting that out in the which would work and which wouldn't, or is this going to be something that we're going to participate in?
We'll talk about that in a minute, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael, I could just argue that rec centers and churches and all of those places have children's worships and tons of kids at them too. I mean, I agree, but maybe we use high school. I mean, high school kids are scarier than the average human being these days. So, there's ways we could probably work around that.
I think we should maybe steer away from the generalizations that high school kids are scary and things like that. I think we can all say that we're concerned about the safety of the children attending the schools, but at the same time, these schools, a lot of schools that are pulling. Yeah, she did. Is something wrong with that?
I said, you haven't been to the mall lately. You've seen some of them.
Used to work with teenagers, ma'am.
She was saying that in jest.
I was saying that in jest, whoever's speaking.
Yeah, you know what? I can also voice my opinion as well.
Oh, excuse me.
That's great. Everyone's free to give their opinion. We welcome it.
I don't believe we use any schools for early voting other than colleges.
I want to address that.
We have one high school on our early voting appointed list from the teacher's court in Grand Prairie. It's not used all the time in early voting, but it is one of our appointed early voting.
But I don't think there's any other.
That's the only non-college school up there.
So I'm going to move on. So the unit cost, even like the equipment rental, the building, personnel, supply expense, service expense, postage, preparation, transportation, all put into one big bucket. So this just gives you some sense of the overall cost of election days. So in 2019, election day only, not early voting, was $2 million. November 20 is, and this is, you can't really count on this number because the person at $1.8 million, the personnel fees were charged to CARE. We had a grant, so all the personnel, which was multiple $1 million before Biden was charged to CARES Act. And in addition, I mentioned before, equipment wasn't charged to the jurisdiction. We didn't have to pay for those that. And so the election day costs were low. So that one's kind of you really can't count that. May 21, $2,075,000. May 22, $1.3 million. November, this last one we just had, was $3.1 million. So that's getting to the big election model where, running efficient. So whereas the November election model where there was a lot of stuff going on, that was probably $4, $5, $6 million. And then this coming May is looking like it's going to be 2.8. Now, you see this May 23 small model number, 1.4. Hold that thought. That's something we're going to talk about. So, concern number 4, voting center is not available, suitable, or available, or ADA compliant. So I mentioned this before, certain voting centers are no longer available, others are not reliably available. So we should consider eliminating some of those. So in November 20, to give you some example, in November 22, 35 unavailable locations. 15 are permanently not available. They never want us back. And so those, that's a no-brainer. That's easy. If we did nothing else, we could say we're going to get rid of those 15. March of 22, there was 45 unavailable locations. Certain voting centers are not ADA compliant. And I can tell you that I've been on the phone with advocates that are ready to sue us. They're ready to sue us. And I kind of talked them off the ledge and I said, listen, we're going to be getting this voting center advisory committee together and we're going to get rid of those bad ADA locations. Because, people do not, they have to have access to these benefits. So in order to do that, what we are doing right now is we have a voting center location survey. We're going out to these locations. I think we just got started this last week. I don't know how many we've done. Kyle and his group, we put together a survey. I can tell you that 2018 maybe, we did an ADA survey. We put it onto a paper survey, we put it in a book, put it on a shelf, never really looked at it. And so, what we really want to do is we want to have a survey not only for ADA, but for all of our purposes. We have really bad intelligence on our location area. We don't know how much square footage, we don't know what the room looks like, we don't know how many plugs, how much power they have, we don't know, hardly anything about other than there's a location and the city clerks, they have much better information on their locations than us, so we have to rely on them many times. And so what we want to do is we're going out with iPads now. It's a kind of a dummy-proof survey where they go through right line and see what they got. Share this with you guys.
Are there going to be criteria released for those of us who are going to be providing new site possibilities so that the sites that we're recommending now fall in line with the criteria that you're using to evaluate old facilities?
Yes, Kieran, and that's one of the reasons I want to kind of show you the survey, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So you can see on the screen now, this is the actual screens that you see on our iPads. Yeah.
So would we need to contact the lady that's doing the surveys and looking at the buildings if we want to add a building that is ADA compliant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what we're doing is we're starting with our most frequently used locations now, and we'll work our way down, through all of our existing locations and any new ones that we might want to consider.
Okay. Michael, we just got that email today. I just got that email today, and it was really short and concise. Didn't really give much content as to who do you contact. So I'm assuming you're sending it out to the school districts too, because I'm not in charge of their facilities. I'm just in charge of my own, and it didn't say if it was general elections, November elections. A lot of that wasn't clear to me.
Right. And that's great feedback, and Nick's taking notes back there. So, but I will say too that some of what we do as far as what we survey will be dependent upon this group, what your intentions are. You might, for all I know, you guys might say, listen, we're good. We don't want to change a thing. 469 EVs. Or you might say, some variation of that. So our plans are kind of dependent upon this group, and we'll modify this.
Michael, hi, this is Cynthia with the City of Hutchins. Is this a time where I need to request that our City Hall be considered an early voting location? When I came in 2018, for 2 years, we were automatically an early voting location. And then after that, we have had to really push the last couple of years to be added on as an early voting location. And Wilmer's had the same problem. For being two of the smallest cities in Southern Dallas that are really our community is already at a disadvantage. And then we're left without a voting center for our community. And then we have to really push each year to get a voting site for our community. Is this the time where we need to request to be added permanently to that list, or for the next couple of years?
This is the place. This is the group that will be considering that, but not today. That'll be in a future meeting where we'll talk about early voting sites. But yes, absolutely. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get the screen back on. I'm not able, Kyle, to do that. It is not presenting. But anyway, this is pretty cool. The iPads, it's kind of dummy proof. You walk through, you answer a whole bunch of questions, you take measurements, you take pictures, you take videos, and we've got a really thorough survey. So we will have really great information about our location. You come up, please.
I have a question, Michael.
Sure, go ahead.
This is Amy with City of Richardson. So you only have 3 meetings scheduled for this committee. Do you expect for us to get down to selecting locations? Because it's already 8:30 and
No, we won't be doing any of that.
we're not getting there.
So today's kind of.
I mean, but in the 3 meetings that you have scheduled, are we going to have more meetings?
Yes. We will, whatever it takes. I mean, so it really depends. And so in the next couple slides, I'm going to talk about our alternatives, and we'll discuss that. And so we're going to get your feedback on what direction we want to go.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we need to get more meetings on our calendar for scheduling purposes. That would be helpful.
And that very well may be the case.
Is there a
You have a question?
Is there a timeline that we need to meet, or are we currently expecting May to stay the same, and then November? I remember last time one of the challenges was it was so close to the election that we weren't able to do something. So I'm wondering if there's a timeline that we need to meet.
So that's part of what I want to talk about next.
I don't think we can get to this.
So the last, I talked about number 4, the voting center location survey. Or number 4. So we're getting better information about our locations, right? So now, moving to now discussion of future utilization. What's the future got in store? So I've contemplated this, and I've contemplated. So there's a lots of things to consider, right? And we can be talking for a long time for a very thorough, in-depth discussion about all these things. Now, one of the things we've done is we've kind of had an approach to say, we got this one size fits all. We got to have the same number of vote centers for a May election as we do for a November election. So it's competing interests, right? Cut for May, have as many as possible for November because we don't want to disenfranchise. 64% turnout versus 10%, 9% turnout. And so one of the things that I've looked into, and our legal department has, and the Secretary of State also has agreed, that what we could do, what we could consider is kind of a dual model. So if you look on this screen, a single model, keep the current, here's our options, keep the current number of vote center locations, don't change a thing. Reduce the number of vote center locations to some, number that's, enough for November election, but not too many for a May election. Or we could increase the number. We could say, okay, we want more. That's using the single model. Those are kind of our options, right? Or we could consider a dual model. In other words, have a low turnout model, expected low turnout for a May Saturday election, and have some number, 250, 300, whatever it might be. And then for presidential, have the existing number or somewhere in that, 400 plus. And so that we don't, we're not trying to do both. We're not trying to serve two masters. And so that's my thought. And so I wanted to pass that along to you to let you know that we believe that is legal. That is an option for us. And so I want to throw that out. And so it's everybody wins. Now, some people still might argue, I don't think you should have the number of locations for a May election either. So I want to kind of toss that general discussion out right now. And so we're talking in generalities without getting into specifics of whether or not that is something you might want to pursue. And next week, we'll probably take a vote on that. Question.
Michael, you mentioned earlier that the vote centers are not new. Are you aware of any data showing that if you cut back the sites, that you would be sacrificing perhaps a percentage of, even if you have a low turnout of say 9%, if it would drop further to 8%, or does the change stay the same, or anything that in other jurisdictions that might have done this already?
I think what I found with statistics, and you guys know this, you can make them do whatever you want. Right? And so, I think generally speaking, the more locations you have, the higher your turnout is going to be, because it's just that much more hours, the more locations generally. I think that the statistics, what drives turnout, and we spend hours and hours projecting for an election by location, by the hour, that sort of thing. There are so many factors involved. It's very, very difficult. So, how hot the race is, who's running, there's so many things that are beyond just location. So I don't think there's any reliable statistics. I think that generally speaking, though, I think it's a safe assumption. If you had 2,000 polling places, and I only had to walk next door, they're more likely to vote. I think that's a safe assumption. Now, it's finding that balance between too many and not enough.
So what we're asking is basically is how many votes we might be willing to sacrifice to lower the cost for the jurisdictions.
I think what I'm suggesting is, we've been struggling with that. We've been struggling with this model of what's the right numbers to run a 64% turnout election and a 10% turnout election. And what I'm suggesting is maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe we have two different models that solve the problem for everyone.
Michael, in the May election in particular, is there an ability to, if a school district nobody's opposed, so they've canceled their election, and maybe the city is not having, let's cancel theirs, or maybe they vote in November, or they only vote every other year. Is there an ability to adjust the number of polling places, kind of the saturation throughout the county? I know that some of the data you gave us said there's got to be a proportionate share in each county district, but is there legally, could you shift some of that, if there's an election going on in, city of Richardson or Richardson ISD, you need as many polling locations in that area?
Well, one of my thoughts is we could go into this and every single election have a different number. 400 this one, 200 this one, 350 this one, etc. I think that is a little bit of a disservice to the voters, because voters want that reliability of, I know this is a location. We want that stability. So that's one of the reasons there is a little bit less stability with a votes, a dual model. But at least it's a May election. I know this is open. It's a November election. I know they're all open. So it does provide some stability, but certainly more if you're changing every single election.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think it becomes even more problematic when you have runoffs for a May election or runoff for primaries. Some of those elections are in June, July. We had some. And that really, lessens the turnout, but also the problem with staffing all those people. And I worked a runoff from last May, and they had a vote center like 2 miles from me that had 3 people all day. And I suggested, don't even have that one.
And so we will, in the coming weeks.
Anybody voted? Well, 3 people. Those 3 people, but if they were told they could come 2 miles.
In the coming weeks, we will provide that sort of data. We will look at all the locations, what the turnout was, the historic turnout, etc., how far they are from the other locations. That's one of the questions.
And Michael?
What would you guys like to see? Go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear me, Michael.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to add, we need to take into consideration the cities. There are some cities that are like, I know my city, for instance, is in November, is going to have a huge election because it's bond for the school district. It's going to be very crowded and it's going to be very long lines because the ballot is going to be long. And I think we need to take that into consideration as well. What do you think?
I think that for every election, we always, when we do our turnout, we look at those, not only overall countywide, but we talk to city secretaries, we talk to the political parties, and we say, hey, you got some hot stuff going on. And so we make our adjustments internally for our staffing and things like that. I don't know that those sorts of decisions, in my opinion, should weigh in the number of locations, because that gets to that. Are we always fluctuating up and down? Or do we have some level of stability? So that gets back to the model.
I would just hate to see that us not have unmanned enough, is that a word? A voting location that will not handle the capacity of the people who will be in there for such a long time. That's all.
Yeah, keep in mind when Carl brought up a point that there's a vote center model. You can go anywhere, and that's why we really advertise. Sure. Look up where to go. Look at your wait times. Go to those locations where there's not a wait. Mm-hmm. But that's another factor. There's lots of things to consider.
Yeah, and I do understand all that. I just am saying, for specific things for bedroom communities, they're not normally going to. They're going to go home and vote, I would say.
I think, so the next slide, which for some reason is not advancing, but you guys got a picture. Today is not a good technology day. So, timeline. So, this is what makes it difficult, right? So, for the March 3rd, for the May election, we really like to get these locations nailed down. And so we'd like to, and I kind of threw out March 3rd, but I'm not even sure if that's, adequate. We got to talk that over with our staff, but I think March 3rd would be adequate. And we're going to meet with the cities, and we're going to have our meeting where we talk through all these dates, because basically we sign a contract with them. We negotiate a contract, and they hire us to run their election for them. So they're the boss. And so some of these deadlines are dependent on what they tell us. So the deadline for a single model is tight, but doable. I mean, so for a dual model, where we said we want to nail down the May polling places by March 3rd, and we want to talk about the presidential over the next several months. In fact, do I have our SMU person here? Andrew. So, Andrew, do you want to kind of talk about SMU and what we talked about together a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm a professor of mathematics. One of the things I'm interested in is political districting problems. So one possibility that we've discussed is treating the vote center placement as a political districting problem. In other words, randomly sample possible ways of distributing vote centers and then study what, say, is the expected turnout in each of those hypothetical vote centers placements, so we could then analyze them and see if we could find good solutions for this problem.
And did you guys get your grant?
I don't know yet. I don't know.
So you guys had applied for a grant to study this over the next several months.
Yep.
So while we, Melissa and I, we're kind of amateurs at analytics. They're the professionals. And so we wanted to bring in some professionals to help us. And so if we went with this dual model, we could make some easy decisions regarding, and frankly, let the voters kind of decide. We could for instance, look at our top locations where voters have historically voted, and obviously those are the ones they prefer to use. And so picking 250, let's say, I'm just pulling out a number, that should be easy. What gets hard is when you start getting to 400, 450, 500, which ones that are on the margins. And so what my thought was, if we went with the dual model, is when we could knock out the May election and continue to work on the presidential. So that's just my thoughts. You guys, it's your committee. I want you guys to weigh in and give me your thoughts.
We need a lot more criteria other than just the number of people who vote.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And so that gets to so I think that's on the last screen. What else do you guys need to know? So as of right now, for future meetings, what we've got scheduled is a January 25th meeting. We've got a February 1st meeting, and then to be determined, depending on, but we've got 2 more scheduled. And so the question is, well, what else do you want to see? I can tell you that we have a really good GIS department that can take all of our data, and we've got a lot of data that we put into maps, and we just crunch the numbers with those maps. And we can give you whatever you want, which includes census information, which includes bus routes, which includes certain economic data on the availability of vehicles, a whole variety of things, including in addition to voter turnout. Because one of the things we want to consider, right, is you might have one affluent neighborhood where driving 2 miles to get to your polling place is easy, but you might have another location or another area that they don't have availabilities to vehicles, so we have to consider walkability. So lots of factors to consider.
Are you saying that if we ran a request from your department to get on a GIS map on our precinct and the total number of registered voters in that precinct, you could give us that information?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll make the request to him.
Just our communications department, who we've been communicating. Any ideas you guys have about what you'd like to see in the coming weeks as far as statistics, we'll try to pull something together.
I think a lot like Cynthia was saying, for the subdivisions who are general elections in May, I think if we could get our early voting centers set, and maybe y'all keep your early voting centers, that is a wide distribution of a lot of early voting centers. And then we could add on, in addition, the election days and view where we could remove them. Like, yeah, I know you and I have talked about one, and we could remove MacArthur High School because it's virtually 2 blocks down the street. So I think the election, the governing bodies that are used to election early voting sites or election day sites, and now they're all vote centers, essentially. We need to get on the same page with that, and then y'all can keep y'all's, and then we can sparse out, because I just think that's a win-win for everybody.
And one of the things that we've contemplated in our discussion with our staff is, when we talk about consolidation, a large model, small model, our thoughts were that for early voting, we'd probably keep them all open all the time. Not vary those. Just if we're at 47 now, in fact, we'll probably increase because there's certain small groups that our callers, I should say, they don't have an early voting section. We'll probably expand to those, have that for every election, and not break down with early voting. That was our thought, but your committee, it's your recommendation.
If we want to add one that we typically had, can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can make the recommendation to commissioners, of course, they will decide.
Right.
Question.
I hate to bring this up because it's not been brought up yet, but I think there's something that goes along here. I know we have other committees, this being a vote center committee, but other committees, but this is intertwined. I I know that you're aware that we have had major problems with our electronic polling books. Now, we don't have to use those, but if we use the vote center model where people can vote anywhere in the county, it would be a logistical nightmare to print off 1.5 million voters registration stuff for each of those locations. And how would we keep it up to date if we did that? How would we keep it up to date as to who voted at what location?
One of the requirements of the statute is if you're going to have a vote center model, you must have an electronic poll book.
So, we've had some problems with electronic voting, especially in this last election about 5 o'clock on the last day of the voting period when so many names were dumped in or something was happened to the database all of a sudden. And we have people, I think there are people outside that get access to that. Or
we had a perception issue where when someone was checked in, that information was automatically downloaded to our vendor's servers. What wasn't happening is they weren't timely, they were backed up, they weren't timely uploading to the computer next to you, to the other computers. So, because there was too much traffic on their network. And so, what happened after 7 o'clock, when the traffic died down, there was no more downloads, all the uploads caught up. And so there was no issue, there was no technical issue, but there was a perception issue where people was like, there's people voting after 7 o'clock. And so it's something we've talked to and commissioners' courts talked to, or we've written legal letters to our vendor that they're going to get this fixed.
But if that's not online in real time, why can't I go to one vote center and vote, then go to another and vote? Because there's no connection between them.
That's why it's a requirement if you're going to have vote centers that you have real-time connection. Near real time.
Is Dallas County Commissioners Court, are they following all of the Secretary of State's laws regarding certifying all the equipment and machines every year?
Yeah, we're in compliance with our.
Did they do that for the last 2 years?
Well, I can't answer that question. I know that we're in compliance.
You sure?
We just got audited.
I was just unsure. There was an update done over the last 2 years.
Well, just so you know, right now, if you were here during the day, we got about 30 ES&S employees in the back. We're updating all of our equipment to the newest version. So it's, we're about 10,000.
Now they are.
Pardon?
I know now they are. I'm talking about over the last 2 years.
Every piece of software and hardware that we use is certified by the state, and they have to be in order for us to use them, including the people. Other questions?
Take into consideration the number of locations that are unavailable, or if we don't put a price guideline, or if they are not compliant before we decide on which model are we going for, like the singular, so we can have an accurate data of how many actual centers.
I don't think we're making any decisions tonight. We've just framed the issues. I think next week the threshold question is going to be: do we want to go with a single model where we find that perfect amount of locations that's not too many for a May election and not is enough for a November election, or do we want to go to a dual model and have two separate numbers? I think that's the threshold question next week. So I want you guys to be stewing on that. And then we go, once we make that decision, then we start digging in. We start, finding those numbers for
As we consider this decision, could we also get a list of those sites by cost, so that those that do cost quite a bit, so maybe we could consider finding you some alternate locations?
Absolutely, we got that's one of the data set that we've got in our GIS.
Michael, this is Amy Niemer, City of Richardson.
Hey,
to your question, as far as what information we'd like to see, when this committee was to reconvene, we were supposed to see a comparison of the vote turnout from before we went to vote centers and then after. So will you be putting that together?
Yes.
Thank you.
And when will that be?
Well, I'm thinking that that's what we want, to hear your feedback on what you want to see. Because there's a lot that we could present, but I hone in on what you guys really want to see. And then we'll present that next week. We'll kind of have that threshold question, and then we'll kind of dive in to now we've decided roughly how many vote centers we have, what our target is, and then we'll start getting to the nitty gritty of which ones.
In addition, I guess you had mentioned that there are several locations that have declined to be a vote center, so we would need to have that information as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael, now that everybody has this information this evening and we're going to be meeting next week, is it possible to relay the additional information that we'd like to see over the next few days, and who would we relay that to?
For our VCE communications, our communications team, Esmeralda, and pass all that information either through email or through phone calls. And they will be passing that information, and they will be sending more further, updates to you over the next week.
Michael, out of curiosity, do we meet the commissioners? Like, are they a part of this process, or do you have the authority to say single or dual?
I don't have any authority. You guys have the authority. I'm just here to help.
But the commissioners make the decision.
Even though this is a recommendation,
You guys are making a recommendation, they will accept it or not.
On single or dual?
Whatever recommendations you guys come out with.
And you can come speak at the commissioners board.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to.
Michael, to the extent that there be a school that doesn't want to hold Tuesday elections, would we be motivated to move them from the list altogether? Because we don't really need them for Saturday elections. So
I think that the law requires schools to be used if we want to use that. I would say my recommendation would be to not bet on the use of schools. Because 300 of our 460.
This is a private or parochial school, though. They could be eliminated if it wasn't practical to keep them on the list.
I think that's up to this committee to make that decision.
Michael, last year we sat down, the parties and many members of the committee and worked really hard to come up with a smaller number for that particular election. But I think that was a really good start because we looked at locations that didn't make sense to have. It weren't on the bus lines, so we kept locations that were on bus lines. I think that may be some place for people to start to take a look at.
I agree.
I think people still need to understand the reasons why they do.
Oh, sure, absolutely, absolutely.
I just have a point of clarification on the schools. By state law, all government-owned independent school districts, schools, and properties have to be available for us to use. But there's no state law that says we have to use them.
That's correct. Any other questions or comments? I can't believe we are so on time. 8:58. So I think our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday. This roughly, how many of you guys are able to make it? Great, appreciate that. So please send in your comments or your thoughts about what you'd like to see next week. We will do the best that we can to present that information. Can I just get it's not official vote, but I want to. This is a survey. Are leaning towards keeping a single model. We're going to ask that, and I'm going to ask how many people are leaning towards dual, a single model. How many people are thinking about dual model? I don't know if anybody online wants to weigh in. I can't see your hands. All right, thank you all so much.
Mike, we just reached.
I forgot, this is a public meeting and we have 3 people that want to speak at this public meeting. So, Aaron, Martha, go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. A comment for, first, you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. This is my first time attending this meeting. I just want to try to understand what's going on. Probably need to attend more meetings, but I just want to make sure that our communities of color make sure they're not disenfranchised with whatever proposals that come out. Make sure they're on bus routes and easily accessible, and those are just things that handicap. We have a lot of people that are aren't very mobile and need access to facilities like that. So those are my concerns, and I look forward to attending more meetings.
Okay, thank you so much. Molly Bishop, you're up. You got 3 minutes.
No, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Pamela Greenson, your time. She online? Okay, so I think that wraps it up for public speakers. And if anyone else has any other questions, thoughts? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you so much.
That was very
We'll see you next week. Yeah.